case of Iryna Zarutska, the Ukrainian refugee killed in Charlotte. The man accused of stabbing her to death has now been found incapable to proceed after a psychiatric evaluation. But that does not mean this case is over. Thanks for staying with us. It's On Your Side tonight at 7:30. I'm Jamie Bold.
And I'm Kim Anderson. This ruling also does not mean that DeCarlos Brown Jr. has been ruled incompetent by a judge. It does not mean there won't be a trial.
So what does this actually mean? Well, let's walk you through it here tonight. According to new court filings, DeCarlos Brown Jr. was evaluated at Central Regional Hospital. It was completed at the end of December, and it found he is incapable to proceed. But here's the important part to remember. That is not a final ruling. Right now, it's just a medical opinion. A judge still has to review that report and decide whether to accept it. Now, we went to Zarutska family attorney Lauren Newton to get some clarity about this.
So, of course, this morning it was reported there was a ruling from the court. That has not happened. This was a motion that's not unexpected. DeCarlos Brown Jr. is still in federal custody, so we didn't expect the Rule 24 hearing in state court to happen at the end of the month because he is in federal custody, still undergoing the psychiatric capacity evaluation by the federal investigators.
So right now, this is part of the process, not the final outcome. Nothing about Brown's legal status has officially changed. This is where things get confusing here. This does not have to do with any guilt or innocence. It is about whether someone can understand the charges and help in their own defense. And there is a specific legal process for that.
A lot of people said this means he's incompetent. No, there is a capacity to proceed under the general statutes for the crime he's been committed or accused of, and then there is incapacity. Those are two separate and distinct proceedings. And for incapacity to proceed, the first step is that psychiatric evaluation. The second step is a capacity hearing.
So what we have right now is step one, that evaluation. A judge still has to decide whether to accept those findings. If a judge agrees with that evaluation, the case does not go away. It actually just shifts. Typically, it moves towards what's called restoring competency. That means treatment, usually in a secure medical setting, to try to get that person to a point where the case can move forward.
If the judge determines that he is incapable to proceed, then there are other proceedings that may include restoring competency, which is the question I think on everyone's mind in Charlotte right now. Will the state seek to restore his capacity?
On top of that process, there is another factor here. Brown is currently in federal custody, charged with committing an act causing death of a mass transportation system. Now, this is different than the murder charge he's faced with in North Carolina. But in that case, his public defender is now asking for a 180-day delay. That includes a hearing that was expected to determine whether the death penalty would be pursued. So this has put the state case on pause. But even with that delay, the family believes this case will still move forward.
That is the expectation of the family, and to watch the state proceedings play out simultaneously in parallel to the federal proceedings.
Also, it's important to remember here there are two systems working at the same time, state and federal, and it's important to make sure every step is done correctly.
No one wants to hurry justice because rush justice is not good for anyone involved in this. But it's also important to understand that the civil and the criminal are separate, but also within the criminal proceedings, the state and federal prosecutions are separate, but typically the federal prosecutions move quicker than state prosecutions just because the volume at the federal level.
So where things stand tonight, a psychiatric evaluation says the suspect may not be able to proceed. A judge has not ruled on that yet. And because he is in federal custody, the case here in North Carolina is now delayed, but it's not over. And the expectation is it will at some point move forward.